these are some of my points that I have. All of these are surface points. I got permission. If you do this, get permission from the farmer, close the gates, be conscious of conservation. I would go up to the farmer, and sometimes I wouldn't even hardly have time to look. I would spend an hour or 2 hours talking about how your crop, how's the wheat crop, how many bushels an acre did you get? Oh, you got a new tractor, a new combine, a new corn picker. How's, you know, they love to talk about, you know, it's hard work and it's expensive. And to have somebody come in and show an interest, you know, and it's exciting for me to learn all of this, because I grew up here in Owensville, but I didn't grow up in a farm, and I went out and helped bale wheat and stuff the old-fashioned way. But then they give you permission, you go down and look in their field. The best time to look is probably January, late December, January, February, when everything is frozen. When the ground thaws and freezes and thaws, these points just come up to the surface a lot. So. A petroglyph, that's in Missouri. Again, vandals went into this cave and destroyed it. These are some of the drawings that are on the boards around here that you'll see later. These people, the Meramec Springs people, lived in this area longer than anywhere else in the United States. We went from Paleo to Archaic, and we had early Archaic, middle Archaic, and late Archaic. And the late Archaic people never developed into the woodland people like they did everywhere else in the United States. They stayed Archaic. And the uniqueness about these people is that they, among all the other people in the United States at that period, developed pottery and the bow and arrow. Now, what happens when you develop pottery? What do you do with pottery, ceramics, that you couldn't do before?
Store stuff.
Cook. What else? Store food, yeah. So that allowed them to stay in one place longer than their predecessors, because, wow, all their pots, all of these people's pots were rounded at the bottom, and they would take a stone and heat it up and put it in there rather than set the pot over top of the fire a lot of times, and they would boil their water that way rather than heat it from the bottom. And they could store food in that way for long periods of time. So if you could store food, hey, wow, I can start growing food. So up until then, they were using the bow or the atlatl and the spear as a weapon, and all of a sudden, these Meramec people started using the bow and arrow and pottery. Now, they didn't start using we don't know it for sure when they started using the bow and arrow. It might have been probably about the same time some other places were starting to use the bow and arrow, but the bow and arrow was a big breakthrough, believe me. Now, the atlatl was very, very efficient, but the bow and arrow was more efficient. So. But this is unique to this area. These Meramec Springs Indians, what the archaeological people call them. But they occupied from 10,000 years ago until just before the first Europeans came in here. So. The Mississippi, I'm jumping ahead, but the Mississippian people who are, if anybody, how many people have been to St. Louis and Cahokia Mountains? You know, so that's the Mississippian people. Now the Mississippian people came through here on hunting parties, and they ran onto these Meramec people. And go, whoa, wait a minute, these people are really out of it. They're hillbillies. You know, so they were in contact. The Mississippian people were in contact with Washington, D.C. and the Europeans. So when they went to Washington, and they said, do you know about these group of people that live over here? So it was written up in a document about these Meramec Springs people. And so the guy who started the big smelter over in St. James saw some of these Indians with red paint on them, and Indians, we call them redskins, because they would paint their body red with red ore, red ore, iron ore. And that was to when they would present themselves, like we would dress up in a tuxedo, they would put red paint on. That's their tuxedo. So that's the honor of the person that they're going to meet. So the term Redskins came from that, a little trivia thing out there. But they saw this red ore and said, wow, where'd you get that? And so that's how St. James, the smelter got started in St. James. He came and investigated, found this big deposit of iron ore. And there's a hematite axe over there that you can see. It has rust spots in it. It's so pure. Hematite comes in either black or red. And it makes excellent axes because they're, if you get time, go over there and feel it. It's really, really heavy. This is a Panther Cave on the Gasconade River, or actually on the Osage Fork of the Gasconade River. They lived in many caves and rock shelters. That's pretty. There are 274 archaeological sites in this Gasconade River basin. So they have gone into a lot of these caves and excavated and done a lot of work where highways went through. In Oklahoma, we have a lot of man-made lakes, and when they were making the lakes, they discovered a lot of Mississippian people sites, and they had to go in there and excavate really fast before the lake filled up. So those are all underwater now. But Tick Creek Cave, which is, if you go to Rolla and go northwest from Rolla, you'll find Tick Creek Cave. And people were living there, and that's right there on the Mississippi, on the Gasconade River, 8,000 years ago. You can actually find the post holes, and the fire pits are still visible today if you know what to look for when you're at an archaeological site. So you'll see a dark area, and a lot of these people, when they had the axes and things like that, they had more than one axe. The women would spend a lot of time making, polishing, and doing the big heavy stones. They would take all those with them. They would bury them because they're nomadic. They're going to come back to the same spot. They don't know, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years later, they know they got a cache of stone axes and points and stuff like that stored there, and when they get back, they can use it. So as a hunter, you need to know that once you find a site where people lived for thousands and thousands of years, there's going to be a lot of pieces of broken chip stones and things like that there. Horticulture probably never played a big important role. I say the archaeological people didn't find any evidence to support this. They probably ate what was there, cooked what was there, but they didn't plant and cultivate any kind of crops like the woodland people did later on. This is kind of what the Merrimack, this is all out of the Tick Creek Cave area, so you know what. This is pretty common to what I have in my collection, and so you can find these all the way up and down the Gasconade River. I'm going to let you read some of this yourself. This is some of the pieces of pottery. They'll have big garbage pits. They'll dig a big deep hole, and that's where they just throw all their broken pottery, broken anything in there. And you can find these, you know, normally the first thing you'll probably find is mussel shell, pieces of mussel shells. And the white mussel shell is showing up when the farmer plows that area. And then that's probably where a trash pit was, and then you probably won't find anything good there, but you can find this is all corded pottery that was in the Merrimack. This is very typical of Merrimack Springs Indian cord bark pottery. So these are 3 of the hematite axes. I found all 3 of these in the same field at different times. I was talking to the farmer on the tractor, and I'm looking down, I see one, just a little piece of it sticking up. I'm saying to myself, I wonder if that's, you know, but I better not pull it out while he's here. and he gave me permission, though. Since he drove off, I pulled it out. It was it's really cool when you pick up something and you know that it's 8,000 or 9,000 years old and nobody has touched it until you come along and pull it out of the ground. And they're just something you can almost feel. Some of the pieces you can pick up and you can tell whether the guy was right-handed or left-handed. Honest, it will fit in one hand better than the other. Not the axes, but the stone tools. Middle Archaic time period, warm, dry climate. Deer herds may have decreased. Greater amounts of bird and fish and rabbit. Bone needles, what does that suggest? Start finding bone needles. We found a lot of these in Graham Cave. They made tailored clothing, so they were seamstress. Here's some of the pieces of flint that a lot of people might just think they're a rock, but that big one in the middle is about 12 inches long. All flint. These are stones where they ground their grain to make their bread and things on. Woven nets for small game. St. Louis area has, because the St. Louis area is where the Missouri River hits St. Louis, just a ton of Clovis points in St. Louis area, probably more than anywhere else in the state of Missouri. I forget how many sites were on the Missouri side of St. Louis when they would build houses and dig a basement. They were finding artifacts all the time there. These were the main tools of the weapons of at the time.